Hi, everybody. We just wanted to make a video here at this kind of a third of the way through the course point to provide some feedback on things we've observed and some updates for you that are hopefully useful. So I would like to start, if we could, just talking a little bit about some misconceptions I've seen in some people's conversations around qualitative research. And this is just intended to help you as you move forward with analyzing or critiquing a qualitative study for your first critical analysis paper. So one thing I've noticed is that people will be critical of studies using few participants. And that's just not an appropriate critique in general for qualitative research, because typically a qualitative scholar is not looking for large numbers of participants. What they're interested in is understanding a phenomenon, like let's say cooperative group work, in depth. So they're going in depth into a situation, typically only involving a small number of participants. They are not concerned with making claims that are generalizable to other contexts. They are concerned, though, with something called transferability. Critical of is the degree to which these scholars give you tons of information about the context in which their study occurred. Tons of information about the context, you as the reader can't decide, is there any transferability here to another context, to maybe my context as a teacher? So do look for and be critical of, is there a lot of information about the setting in which this occurs or the participants involved? That's something you can critique because you're trying to decide, is this transferable? Lastly, I did find a few misconceptions around what thick description actually is. It is in part all of that information about context, but it also shows up referring to the findings section. So in qualitative research, typically the section is called findings. Usually it's not called results. That's actually one way to decide. This might actually be a quantitative piece. It's typically called findings, and it should be long. It should be full of, depending on the data collected, participants' own words. Or if it was observation heavy, the data collection, lots of description of what was observed. So there's another way that you can critique. Thick description refers to, have we described this context and setting in detail? Do we get to hear participants' own words? We shouldn't be in doubt that the scholar or the author or the researcher is really working off the participants' own words. So these are things you can critique, small number of participants, because that's actually appropriate. Anything else, Dr. Wright?
Well, sure. So the Malwini article that you all read, what was odd was that she talked about external validity and generalizability, which makes her originally a qualitative researcher. Just my guess. The other thing is, as you're looking to identify qualitative argument, it's really important to make sure that you're looking at either the results or the findings section. If you see a lot of tables and charts, that's another clue that you're looking at a quantitative article. Because now's the time where you're really trying to decide what kind of articles you have. That's my only addition there.
Same, yeah, as people have been sending us articles just to double check, is this qualitative? I mean, the easiest thing to do is literally do a word search for qualitative. But then from there, we want to know more than that. Usually I immediately, if I can't determine from the abstract, which I often can because they will detail their own, briefly detail their data collection methods, the methods, and look at what is it that they're collecting, how are they analyzing it. If there's any statistical analysis there, it tells me it's quantitative. So those are just, tips. Again, there will be tables sometimes, but these are just sort of summary tables typically. They might include demographic information. If they are statistical analysis tables, this is not good.
Okay. So the other things that we wanted to do was provide just some nuts and bolts information about how things are going and how Dr. Brooks and I are splitting up the discussion boards and the grading. So the new group discussion boards, for the first one, the qualitative one, what we did was Dr. Brooks worked and responded to groups 1 through 5, and I worked with groups 6 through 10. For the next new group discussion that's due tomorrow night with the experimental studies, we're going to flip that. So I'll be working with groups 1 through 5, and Dr. Brooks will be responding to groups 6 through 10 for the new group discussion boards. And then the next time around, we'll just keep reversing that order. The other thing that we're going to do as far as your critical analysis papers, for the first critical analysis paper, Dr. Brooks is going to grade the ones for the students in the beginning of the alphabet according to last name, and I will be grading the last half of the alphabet, and then we will flip that around for the second critical analysis paper too. So you'll all have an opportunity to get feedback from each of us, which we think is a really good way to help you get 2 different perspectives on what your writing is. Our goal is to have you feedback on those first critical analysis papers by Tuesday morning. Is that what we decided, Dr. Brooks?
Knew it.
That's our goal anyway, because it'll be important for you to have feedback as you move forward, because the turnaround's pretty quick for the next one that's due not too long after that. So we're going to really work hard to try and get you good feedback on that, and and just like you, still trying to keep up with the module work too. The final thing we wanted to talk a little bit about was the literature reviews and those modules that happen during the week. And so there's a little bit of preparation for each Google Hangout meeting that you have with your groups. But Dr. Brooks and I really wanted to emphasize that while doing that work is really important, the other thing that's important to be doing outside of those group meeting times is reading. You've got to read your articles to really be able to pull out the themes well. And so it is, again, we understand it's a lot of work, but you do need to be reading those articles in between your group meetings so that you're really able to digest what is the state of the research in the area that you care about, what your question is. Do you have something to add?
Only thing I will say is, some groups seem like they're in a really good position with having kind of delegated aspects of their topic to each other. They've kind of organized their literature, so there won't be a lot of duplicate reading unless it's necessary, because the study actually addresses different aspects of the topic, that kind of thing. So if you don't feel like your group is there, keep pushing each other, keep questioning each other, keep trying to get to the point where you feel confident in what you're spending the time kind of pouring through, because these articles they're not light reads. I mean, you want, if you're really going to dig into several pieces, you want to know that this is geared toward the topic you're headed toward, and also it's your kind of responsibility for the group. So if you don't feel like you're there yet, communicating with your group to get there, use your lit review discussion board, getting there so you really feel like no one wants to feel like they're doing wasted work or overlapping work. So just make sure you get there.
Right, that's a good point. And a lot of the groups have started, a lot of my groups anyway, have started Google Docs, where they're sharing some of their information, or even starting to outline some of the things that they're reading about with the themes in mind. So that might be a good way to keep up in between your group meetings, is if you have some sort of shared document, then it might be easier to do that.
Another thing I've seen, a couple of groups have realized that a couple of definitions are going to be really critical. So how is, let's say, motivation defined? And so they're realizing we want a separate note for every one of our pieces that actually identifies how motivation is being defined in this salient to our group. So if that's important to your topic as well, just a great way to kind of do your reading of these articles.
Okay. So really, that's all we really wanted to say this morning, but we just wanted you to get a little update from us and get some encouragement, because we know how hard you're all working, and we really appreciate all the efforts you're putting into the course, the efforts you're taking to meet with one another and be kind and conscientious to the group needs. I think you're all doing a great job so far, and I think that that's shown through the participation grades from week 1, and I've seen great participation this week as well. So we just really appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you all soon.